Hi, I'm Cam,
And I'm Dev.
and you're listening to Criminalish, a true crime podcast where two best friends trade stories ranging from the wild and wacky to the downright messed up. Welcome back to your true crime wrap. So, as y'all know, last year we did a recap series where we covered crazy true crime stories that happened throughout 2024. And if you missed the previous two parts, pause this episode, go back to our podcast on whatever streaming platform you're listening to, and make sure you watch or listen to the previous two so you have context. But if you like doing things out of order, the way this is going to go is that we're going to talk about true crime stories that have been in the news for 4 month periods of the year. And we will take turns covering a few stories from each month. Let's say I cover January, Dev is going to cover February. And just a disclaimer that these are intentionally not deep dives because we wanted to give you all a high volume of cases. And because of that, we didn't have the time to go as deep as we typically would. We're still going to try to get you all the juicy details, though. Don't worry. So, for this episode, we're going to be covering cases that happened between September and December of 2025. Last episode, we talked about cases like Cardi B's trial and a woman who lied about her pregnancy so much so that she is being charged with fraud. So if that interests you and you still have not listened to those episodes, please go back, listen to it, or finish this one and then go back and listen to it.
Those episodes will be in the description of this episode. So just scroll down and click. I already helped you out.
See, we made it easy for you. Look at that. And the other question we sometimes get is, why do we do this instead of just finishing out the year with some deep dive juicy cases? Well, oftentimes we get questions and requests like, oh, can y'all cover this big case? Or why haven't y'all talked about this? And the cases that we do deep dives on typically are less well known and or have concluded for the most part in terms of the trial, investigation, and all of that. And a lot of times the cases y'all ask us about, they're either well known by pretty much everybody or they're so new that they haven't gone to trial yet. We want to see the full conclusion before we add it to our list. But we still want to give y'all our thoughts. And so we came up with this idea as a way to keep y'all in the loop of what's happening, give you our thoughts, and still focus most of our attention on our deep dive cases, on those lesser known cases and those cases that have been concluded. So, like I said, we're going to kick off this episode talking about cases that happened between September and December of 2025. So, just a disclaimer that we are recording this on December 28th. So, if y'all do anything between now and the new year, we cannot be held accountable.
Thank you kindly. Please don't do anything between now and the new year.
Yeah, just chill, please. But before we get into that, friend, what we drinking?
Well, friend, I didn't plan well. So we are just drinking whatever we managed to pull out of my fridge earlier today, which was some mango XXL wine, because apparently that's what I keep in my fridge. Maybe somebody should be concerned. I kind of am. I'm not going to lie to y'all. But that's what we're drinking today.
With ice.
With ice, because apparently Cam said that's the way to enjoy it.
Yes, so. It's much better because if y'all ever have had XXL, it can be a little strong. But if you add some ice to it, those flavors that taste like cough syrup become a little bit better.
So what I'm hearing is if you water down the wine, you will like it.
Or if you drink it really cold. Let's say that too.
Fair. All right. I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm. But also if you water it down, I'm sure it's better. So now let's get into the foolishness that was the end of 2025. And we're going to start off with September, which I will be covering. And the first case we're going to cover for September, I know you've heard of it, and I'm sure 90% of our listeners have heard of it. And that is Celeste Rivas Hernandez's body being found in the R&B singer David's car. This happened on September 8th in Los Angeles, California. And what we know is that Celeste was likely 14 at the time of her death. There is a lot of reporting that says she was 15. She was 15 at the time her body was discovered, but her birthday was September 7th, and the medical examiner has estimated that she'd been dead for weeks. So I am going to just go out on a limb and say she was most likely 14 when she passed. Police discovered her body in the front trunk of a Tesla that had been in a tow yard after people in the tow yard had reported a bad smell. Celeste, who was originally from Lake Elsinore, California, had been reported missing by her family in April of 2024, more than a year before she was found dead. At this time when she was reported missing, she was 13 years old and in 7th grade. The car she was found in was registered to David, spelled D4VD, who is an emerging R&B singer who happened to be on his quote-unquote romantic homicide tour at the time her body was discovered. No arrests have been made at the time of this recording, but according to ABC News, David is being considered a suspect. We also know that Celeste was the daughter of El Salvadoran immigrants and was well known in her neighborhood as a nice girl. She'd been reported missing by her family 2 other times in 2024, once on Valentine's Day and another time in mid-March. She returned home after a few days both times she'd been reported missing, and after she'd been reported missing for the 3rd time in April of 2024, she apparently called her family around May, but they hadn't heard from her after that despite asking neighbors and other friends for help locating her. After her body was found in September of 2025, her funeral was held in October. And, as I said, no arrests have been made, but David has come under a lot of scrutiny as their relationship together has been confirmed. They have matching tattoos that say, quote unquote, shh. Her family also knew that she had a boyfriend named David, but it's unclear if they ever met him. However, her brother did state that her boyfriend David and David the singer were the same person and that she'd been going to see a movie with him the day that she went missing in April of 2024. People have also posted photos from David's live streams and other events that show David and Celeste together. I will also note that David was 20 years old at the time of Celeste's body being found. In the early stages, David's representative said that he was cooperating with the investigation, but ABC News reported that their sources stated that he was not cooperating. His house and his manager's house were searched shortly after her body was found. As a result of the discovery of Celeste's body and the subsequent investigation, David's tour was canceled. Sony stopped promoting his upcoming album. Hollister and Crocs ended marketing campaigns they were doing with him, and Kali Uchis removed a song that they did together. The medical examiner has not released a cause or manner of death. This is actually because the police is not allowing the medical examiner to release any information to the public at this time. However, ABC News did report that her body was dismembered and that multiple people were likely involved in this.
Girl, you want to know what's actually interesting is I have a different friend, shout out to Kinsey, who put it on my radar because she's a David fan. She liked his music. She was listening to his music and she was like, this has come out with this artist that I like and you need to do some research and do the digging part of it. Because I'm that friend. I love that I've become that friend to all my friends. When they start seeing weird things happening, they send it to me and tell me, figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Connect the dots.
Connect the dots for me and then call me back later. So when she sent it to me, I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's weird. And then like the more that came out, especially when her age came out, when his age came out, the photos and videos of them on live streams together, like when she was supposedly missing, like it's all very weird and creepy and I don't like it at all.
Also the romantic homicide. He's made other references in his songs to like his whole shtick is kind of the dark lover thing. And not saying that anybody who has a dark lover shtick for their artist persona is a murderer, just saying it was also a weird part of this whole case.
Yeah, it's a weird I will give you a weird coincidence.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like it's the same thing. Like I have this debate with people all the time because I like horror movies, right? And I've literally had somebody look me dead in my eyeballs and say, well, if that person is capable of thinking about that for a horror movie, they're capable of doing it in real life.
No.
And it's like, no, not at all. Because there's this lovely thing called special effects. And like, maybe you can't understand why somebody might take like dark visions and dark things they see and try to turn it into a positive thing, aka a movie. So I don't give a lot of weight into that. But it is something, again, that is just a creepy coincidence.
And I think it also fed into the sensationalization of it.
Correct. Because that's what I felt like everybody was globbing onto, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not the first artist to have dark lyrics. You know, me and Kim were literally talking about this right before we recorded. I like rock music, right? And so sometimes in rock music, they say some outlandish things in rock music. And I'm not worried about whether or not somebody's actually going to do something to somebody in real life.
Right.
Like, you know, 99 times out of 100, I'm not concerned. Right. But it's just so sad. And it's so creepy to me because, like, if we look at the timeline, how everything works out, even if David is completely innocent and he didn't do anything to Celeste, somebody he knows did.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, she's in your car. And luckily, quote unquote, luckily, you're famous. So you're not the only one who has access to your car.
Right.
But she's in your car.
And I think regardless of if he didn't kill her, he had a romantic relationship with an underage girl who had been reported missing by her family.
So,
yeah.
To me, it starts teetering over into this feels like kidnapping. Allegedly, possibly. David, don't sue us. We don't know nothing.
Yeah.
Because here's also the thing. One thing I love about the internet, specifically people who watch streams and Twitch and things like that, is they are eagle-eyed people. Like, people being like, no, I remember on this day at this time at 7 minutes and 47 seconds, Celeste was on screen and they interacted, right?
Yeah.
And they went and found the clips and, like, you know, before everything got taken offline. But at that point, I'm not going to lie to you, I've always had the opinion of, like, if people start pulling your clips, there's no point in deleting anything.
Right.
Because they're already been saved.
They've already been saved.
Yeah, the VOD is already on somebody else's personal device. It doesn't matter if you take things down. But it also didn't help that when the clips started coming out, your whole Twitch discography disappears.
Right. But yeah, this was a case that was all over the news. It's been all over the true crime channels. Also, people on the other side of this are saying, well, they said he's being cooperative. His representative said he's being cooperative, not the police. And just because no arrest has been made doesn't mean that no arrest will be made. Right. In a high profile case like this, police don't want to mess up.
Right. And also in that same vein, I think it's important to talk about, like, what's your definition of cooperation? Because if we want to be all the way really real, LAPD's version of cooperation is you come in there, you tell us everything we want to know, you answer all of our questions, no lawyer present.
Yeah.
But to the representative, well, we gave LAPD the contact to his lawyer so that he could, you know, call him and schedule a time and do all the other stuff with a lawyer present.
He hasn't fled the country.
Boom. And they may consider that cooperation.
Exactly. But yeah, I think the other thing about this too is I feel really bad for her family. I mean, she comes from a family of immigrants. It's just not a great time to be an immigrant in this country right now.
Yeah.
Then to deal with this on top of it, have that attention. And then because you have this young girl, this young teenager who it seems like she left her family. We don't know if it was of her own volition, but from some people's view, she could have left her family, just ran away. And now her body is being found. I am sure that unfortunately there are people who are telling her family, well, you probably didn't raise her right. Or she was being fast. That's what they love to throw around. She was being fast.
They only do that to women of color, though. If we want to be all the way really real. They only do that. They only do that when women of color go missing.
Exactly. And so not only does her family have to deal with the grief of losing their daughter, their loved one, their family member, they have to deal with, I'm sure, what is a lot of attention being put on them and a lot of criticism being lobbed at them too.
Exactly. And I just don't understand people who have the audacity to want to try to give criticism when it's like, you know, maybe you should leave a family to mourn their dead 14-year-old.
Exactly.
Maybe you should leave them alone. Maybe you should be a decent person and bring them a plate of food and some cookies.
Yeah.
You know,
and then to
go light a candle at the vigil or something. Be a decent person. But to, like, be nasty. And again, it always pisses me off when people try to do that. Oh, well, that little girl was out there doing whatever else. It's like, it's always interesting to me how y'all have all this smoke for this little girl apparently going out and doing a bunch of stuff. And I'm not hearing any smoke towards the 20-year-old with a 13-year-old on his stream.
Right.
I'm not hearing a lot of smoke about that. I'm not hearing about how that's weird as hell. And maybe this is me. Maybe this is a me thing. In my opinion, there is no reason for a 13-year-old girl to be alone within 18, 19, 20. We weren't sure. We're not exactly sure how old David was when they were hanging out, according to the Twitch streams, allegedly, all of that stuff. But in my opinion, he's too damn old to be hanging out with a 13-year-old.
Exactly. That has been reported missing by her family.
Boom. And that her family clearly doesn't know you.
Yeah. But yes, definitely let us know y'all's thoughts on this case. I am sure that in the next couple of months, we will get an update here. Because things have been moving. They've just been moving behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing for certain and two things for show is LAPD doesn't like to put a lot out into the ether, quite honestly, because they have dropped the ball a few times. So just because we don't get the headlines, things are definitely moving for sure.
So now let's move on to the next case we have for September. And that is the case of the sentencing of the Australian woman who poisoned her family members with mushrooms. This also took place on September 8th, 2025 in Melbourne, Australia. So a couple months prior, in July of 2025, 50-year-old Erin Patterson was convicted of murdering the couple Don and Gail Patterson and Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson, with beef Wellingtons laced with death cap mushrooms. She was also convicted of trying to murder Heather Wilkinson's husband, Ian Wilkinson, who had survived the poisoning after spending weeks in the hospital. And on September 8th, 2025, she was sentenced to life in prison with a non-parole period of 33 years, meaning that she would only be eligible for parole at the age of 83. So, for context, if y'all are not familiar with this case, back in July of 2023, Erin had told her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, and his family that she'd been diagnosed with cancer and invited them to lunch to discuss how to break the news to her children. Side note, she don't have cancer. She didn't have cancer. However, Erin's estranged husband, Simon, did not come. Even though Erin's estranged husband, Simon, did not come, his parents, Don and Gail, and his aunt and uncle, Heather and Ian, did come. Ian was also a pastor at one of the local churches, and after he recovered, he stated that Erin served the guests their food on gray plates while her food was served on an orange plate. Erin, in her defense at her trial, stated that she'd added the death cap mushrooms to the beef Wellingtons by accident. However, in the investigation, it was proved that she had lied to doctors and told them that she was also sick from the beef Wellingtons, but what she was saying to doctors did not line up with her symptoms. And just a side note, her sentencing hearing was the first time a sentencing hearing in the Victoria Supreme Court was broadcasted on national television. So, yeah, everyone got to see that in 4K. But yes, unfortunately, as a result of this poisoning, 3 people died. One person was seriously injured in the hospital and still has not physically and emotionally recovered from this. And this is a pretty small community that this happened in. So the whole community has been shattered, not to mention Simon, who lost his parents and aunt and their children, who now have to live with this. And she still has refused to take accountability.
Oh, of course. She's never going to take accountability.
Yeah. Which I'm happy about because that makes her chances of ever getting parole, even at the age of 83, very slim.
0. Yeah, girl, I remember when this case happened because I'm actually pretty sure this was my vote for the recaps. So when me and Cam are putting our recaps together, obviously we are into different kinds of true crime and different kind of cases. So we like to come together and like give suggestions for the other of like, oh, well, I was following this case that happened in June. It might be good to cover that and vice versa. So I'm actually really glad that you picked this case because I've been wanting to talk crap about this woman for months.
And I give you the floor.
You give me the floor. Look here, Erin. I understand, babes. You hate your ex-husband. You hate your ex-husband so much that your dumb ass ruined your whole life and poisoned his whole family and took away your children's grandparents, great aunt, and then ruined any semblance of reconciliation that you could have had with your ex-husband. Because I don't even think they were divorced yet.
Nope, they weren't divorced. They were estranged,
Exactly.
separated.
Exactly. So any chance of reconciliation you had, you took a massive dump on it the moment you smeared that mushroom on that prosciutto. And God, it was like, and I don't know about you, I don't know how much like digging in you did, because again, these are high level, but like the reporters that were storming that woman's house and being like, do you have any commentary on like the 3 people you just killed? Do you have anything to say? And her like trying to play victim.
Right.
Her trying to act like she's a victim. Her trying to still be like, I too was poisoned by my own food. I am just a miracle child that survived.
Yeah. So I didn't do a deep dive when I was doing the research for this case, but coincidentally, I happened to listen to a case file episode on this case, I think a couple months ago. And one thing I remember is her claim that she did it accidentally just didn't hold up, because when they looked into her internet search history and internet activity, she'd been scrolling forums for mushroom foraging and had specifically been looking at people who posted about, oh, I saw death cap mushrooms in this area. Beware, watch out, don't forage those. And whenever she saw a post about it, they tracked her location, going to the location where it was posted about.
Look, the Google will always snitch on you.
Mhm.
I will never understand how people are so stupid to Google their crimes or to save things about their crimes. But you know what? I love it. Stupid people are easier to catch.
Exactly.
So it is what it is. But yeah, I'm so glad that she's going to go to prison forever.
Same.
Because let's be real, very few people make it into their 80s in prison. So
yeah, and apparently she's in like solitary confinement, and the person she shares a wall with is insane.
Oh yeah, she's not making it to 80. She's gonna have a time. The time is gonna be had for her, babe.
The time she deserves.
She is getting the sentence she deserves.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because we as a society don't allow ourselves to be as cruel to her as she was to her victims.
Unfortunately not. So for our last case for September, we're going to end on not a completely positive note, but a slightly positive note. And that's when Brian Walsh was stabbed in jail.
Oh, sounds like a positive note to me, friend.
So on September 12th, 2025, in Dedham, Massachusetts, Brian Walsh, who was at the time in jail awaiting trial for his wife's murder, was stabbed in jail. He was taken to a hospital and released the same day. It wasn't a deep stab or anything like that. He's fine. Physically. Specifically in relation to his wife's murder, he had been charged with first-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and improper conveyance of a human body. So, if you have not heard of this case, here is some additional context. Anna Walsh disappeared early in the morning of January 1st, 2023, after she and Brian had a friend over for New Year's Eve. Brian told police that she'd left the house in a rideshare between 4 to 6 a.m. so that she could catch a last-minute flight to D.C. for work. However, police couldn't find any evidence that she made it on the plane or had even gotten to a rideshare. And in terms of the evidence that they had against Brian and her disappearance and assumed murder, searches on Brian's son's iPad, like, quote, 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to, end quote, which I would think if you got to dispose of a dead body, you need to.
Fair enough.
And, quote, how to clean blood from wooden floor, end quote. They also had surveillance videos from multiple stores of Brian spending more than $400 on cleaning supplies like tarps, a full coverage suit, and a mop and bucket. In addition to that, they had surveillance videos from apartment complexes showing him dumping garbage bags into multiple dumpsters. Some bags were not able to be recovered before they were sent to the dump, but those that they did recover had things with bloodstains, cleaning supplies, and Anna's clothes and personal items. When police searched Brian and Anna's home, they found blood and a bloody knife in the basement of their home. And lastly, in terms of evidence against Brian, Anna had an almost $3 million life insurance policy with Brian as the sole beneficiary. Now let's get to the trial. Brian's defense tried to get access to emails and text messages from investigator Michael Proctor. And if that name sounds familiar, he was the lead investigator on the Karen Reed case and had been fired for his behavior in that case. If you want more info, go back to our 2024 recap. We covered it there. We got y'all. And more pre-trial mess. After Brian had been stabbed, his defense attorney stated that he may not be competent to stand trial. I guess he was so traumatized. And this resulted in an almost month delay in the trial. And lastly, right before jury selection began in mid-November, Brian pleaded guilty to misleading police and improper conveyance of a human body, but his attorney still stated that he wasn't admitting to murdering Anna. Like I said, his trial began on December 1st. And during the trial, his defense stated that Brian didn't kill his wife, but instead found her unresponsive in their bed and lied to law enforcement to protect his children. And if you're wondering how that makes any sense, we don't know. We don't know what type of mental gymnastics him and his attorneys were doing. And while prosecution had almost 50 witnesses and ample evidence from the investigation, the defense did not present any evidence and they did not call any witnesses. And that brings us to December 15th, when after 6 hours of deliberation across 2 days, the jury found Brian Walsh guilty of first-degree murder. And on December 18th, he was sentenced to life in prison without the chance for parole. He was also sentenced to at least 21 years for the charges he pleaded guilty to, which will be served consecutively with his murder sentence. And a side note, Brian was already serving a 3-year sentence on art fraud charges that stemmed from him trying to sell fake Andy Warhol paintings.
Yes.
Which had contributed to some of the discord in him and Anna's marriage.
Yes, absolutely. Friend, this was a case that I started following, funny enough, as a direct result of the Karen Reed trial. Y'all know that in my spare time, I've gotten into watching trials. I watch entire court days with Emily D. Baker. It really is very interesting to me. The court process is very interesting. And it is not what you would think in a lot of ways and a lot of times. For me anyways. And so this is, again, another trial that I watched every day of, starting when he pled guilty to those first charges in court. Because what's hilarious is at that hearing, the judge asked him if he was married, and he said yes. If you don't know, the reason that is a problem is because when your spouse dies, you are widowed and no longer considered legally married. And his defense attorney had to get up and answer the question to basically say, he is admitting that he is not legally married, but he is still spiritually married to Anna. And he was also clutching a rosary the entire trial. We don't have time to unpack that. I had big issues with him.
We don't have time to unpack the mess that is Brian Walsh.
We don't at all. But the funniest thing about his trial to me is, in my opinion, part of the reason that he pled to the lesser 2 charges is because he was planning to get on the stand and say, I am taking accountability. Yes, I lied to police. And yes, I dismembered and hid my wife's body. Yes, I did that. But I didn't murder her. Because if you watch the opening statements, which I will say, to give a mouse a cookie, his male defense attorney, he is a unit of a man. He did great.
I think they earned their check.
Absolutely. I think he's a public defender too. I'm pretty sure his male attorney is a public defender, but not he doesn't work in the public defender's office. He works like at a law firm that does pro bono, defense of like people. So it's the same thing. It's like a court still spins a wheel and it's like, okay, Tafford, it's you. Go ahead, take care of that. Right. But he was a great attorney because there were definitely times where like he was answering questions and going back and forth. And I will admit, I was sucked into his opening statement. His opening statement did it for me. Okay. It was good. There was obviously some like, come on now, you don't really expect me to believe that. Yeah. But quality wise, my man was a quality attorney. Okay. And I've realized I do like that. I do like seeing good defense attorneys because he didn't make stupid arguments. Yeah. He didn't try to blame Anna for her own death or something crazy like that. He focused primarily on like basically Brian making bad decisions in an emotional state. Right. Right. And that's why I liked him, because he didn't try to make Anna this evil woman. Right. Apart from the fact that Anna was absolutely having an affair. But we don't have time to unpack that.
We don't have time to unpack the affair. That's why I didn't even include it. I came across it and I was like, this is going to take us down a hole. And it took me down a hole.
Yes. Yes. Like maybe that's another Patreon thing we do is we talk about Brian Walsh in depth. Yeah. But his male defense attorney was really good. I really liked him. I didn't really care for his female attorney because she kind of did that thing that I don't like, where attorneys, like when people are answering questions, they go, oh, okay. Oh, okay. They like have a very condescending like tone that like tries to like make themselves sound smarter than the person testifying. And that's just annoying to me. It's a strategy. It's a choice, but it is what it is. But more importantly, the worst part about it is his male defense attorney framed his whole opening statement around Brian testifying. Everybody was under the impression that Brian was going to testify. From the plea to the opening statement, the things he said in his opening statement that only Brian would know, is like, so you're going to learn that this is what happened. The only person who could tell you that's what happened is Brian. So Brian's got to testify.
Mhm.
And then when that fool stood up after the prosecution rested and said, I will not be testifying, even the judge went, he's not. The judge said out loud, oh, so all that work I did yesterday to make sure that we're good, I don't need to, that's null and void, right? Oh, like, I'm telling you, threw off the whole court process. Right. The jury wasn't even supposed to get that case until the week of Christmas. Because they anticipated Brian testifying.
Yeah.
So when Brian doesn't testify, the defense has nobody to put up. It was crazy. It was crazy. When I remember watching it and like almost falling out of my chair. Because I was like, what do you mean this fool isn't going to testify? We've been talking about this fool testifying for 6 months.
Literally.
So yeah, it was nuts. I'm sorry. I'm kind of fangirling a little bit, but because this trial was so interesting to me, but it was very well presented. It was very well done. The prosecution did a great job focusing on Anna, talking about the things that were important, like the affair, but bringing them up in a very tactical way so it doesn't become like this, like, let's dog pile on Anna,
right,
kind of thing. Because if I was going to be honest, if my husband was sitting here refusing to just take a year of jail and like holding us hostage and not letting me do what things I want to do in life, maybe I was starting an affair too. I'm sorry. Like he was not giving her a lot to work with at all.
He wasn't. And I think too, it was just like a lot of stress.
Yes.
Because he had even used her account or computer or something. She wasn't being charged, but her account was involved. I think it was like her eBay account or something.
Right.
Was involved in the crime.
Right. So it's like, you've also wrote me into this thing that I ain't got nothing to do with.
Exactly.
And I'm just sitting here trying to support the household because remember, Anna made all the money.
Oh, and the other thing that I did read is he didn't get anything from his father when his father died. And he was pissed about that. And his father wrote in his will, I'm not giving anything to that man, because he had tried to swindle his father years before.
Yep.
So he's true to this, not new to this.
True to this, not new to this, but you couldn't tell his mama that. If you ask his mama, to this day, he an apple of her eye, which is also why she ain't having access to her grandchildren. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. I know we've been talking about this very just like, we're just having a conversation, but I want to bring it back to the main thing of like, Anna just did not deserve to leave this earth the way that she did.
Right.
Her family did not deserve to not be able to bury her, because I don't think a lot of people realize they never recovered any part of Anna's remains. They found her fat on a knife that he had discarded. That's the only part of her body that they were able to recover, because the trash cans that he took her body to were incinerated. They were not dumped. So everything that is Anna is gone.
Yeah.
And for her family to have to go through the last 2 years of accepting that Anna's gone and that they're never going to see her again, with nothing to bury, nothing to give them peace, nothing to lay to rest, is really hard. Especially when you think about her friends who literally saw her 2 days before she died. One friend who saw her hours.
Right.
He was at the house. It is believed that she was killed within an hour of him leaving the house. That has to put the biggest pit in your stomach in the world of like, obviously you can't do anything, but the survivor's guilt must eat him alive. And he testified and it was clear that he was devastated.
Yeah.
And so I wish nothing but the best for her family, for her community, for her friends, for her chosen family. Like, she had really built a life for herself out in DC, and Brian just refused to put himself in a situation where he could support her.
But that covers all the cases that I had for September.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's go on to October, Dev. I'm sure you got some mess.
Girl, it's spooky season, and the girlies were spooky.
Yeah, I was spooked.
So our first case for October is spooky in the spookiest way, because it spooked the entire Bravo verse. And that's because on October 10th, 2025, my birthday, by the way, the Carroll County Sheriff's Office announced that Dr. Wendy Osefo and her husband Eddie Osefo of the Real Housewives of Potomac power couple were arrested following an indictment by a grand jury of an alleged scheme involving insurance fraud and false reports to police. Dr. Wendy Osefo, a 41-year-old professor and reality star, is facing 16 charges, while her husband, Eddie Osefo, an attorney and cannabis brand founder, is facing 18 charges. And 7 of these counts are felonies related to providing false or misleading information. Wendy is also facing a misdemeanor count of making a false statement to a police officer. According to my sources, the investigation tracks back to April 7th, 2024, when the Osefos reported to deputies when their home in Franksburg, Maryland, had been burglarized while they were away on a vacation in Jamaica. They claimed a staggering loss of luxury goods, including jewelry, designer bags, clothing, shoes, totaling somewhere between $200,000 and $450,000, depending on the source. However, detectives soon began to find cracks in their story. First, the Carroll County Sheriff's Office stated that the surveillance footage showed no signs of a burglary at the residence, and even more damaging, investigators discovered that the couple had allegedly returned roughly $20,000 worth of the quote-unquote stolen merchandise to stores to get a full refund before the burglary had even been reported. And on top of that, there was the social media trail. Wendy was allegedly spotted on social media wearing one of the diamond rings she had officially reported as stolen. And by November and December 2025, prosecutors began revealing the sheer scale of the financial investigation. Prosecutors alleged that the Osefos were operating with approximately 40 credit and debit cards, and these accounts weren't just in their own names. The state claims that they used company names and aliases like Pam Oliver and Eddie Hennessy in what prosecutors called a, quote, deliberate attempt to mask their identity, end quote. On December 19th, 2025, a judge ruled that the couple must turn over 8 years of financial records to the court, and prosecutors believe these records will show a, quote, pattern of excessive spending, end quote, that would establish a motive for the alleged $450,000 insurance fraud. Now, the Osefos legal team has been quite vocal, calling the prosecution's tactics a, quote, fishing expedition, end quote, and an annoyance. In a joint statement, they argued that the use of different names was simply to safeguard their privacy as public figures when receiving packages, not for fraudulent applications. They also claimed investigators failed to properly examine clear signs of a break-in and displayed a bias against the family. While they wait on their day in court, Dr. Wendy Osefo resigned from her position as a distinguished visiting professor at Wesleyan University. And over at Bravo, the premiere of Wife Swap, the Real Housewives edition, which was set to feature the Osefos, was postponed and eventually moved to an episode featuring a different set of cast members.
The funniest part about their defense is them saying that they used fake names on the cards because they wanted to safeguard their privacy when ordering packages. Like, you can't just put a name on the shipping address.
Yep.
You don't use a fake name for debit and credit card applications.
Thank you.
You just don't do that.
Because those are, legal documents.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be really interesting if you're filling out these applications with different names, but they all come back to the same social security number.
Exactly. And you would think a distinguished visiting professor and an attorney would be able to figure that out together. But sometimes I think the prospect of earning a lot of money just blinds people to common sense.
Oh, absolutely, girl. Especially when you're on the Real Housewives, where that show has just become about spending money. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. I was never a Housewives girly. I was never really into it. It never filled my cup up. But when all these girls started getting arrested, I tuned in.
Right.
Because I too needed to see you wearing the $20,000 diamond ring you said is stolen. I too needed to be able to be like, nah, in season 4, episode 22,
like, at least hire people to fake burglarize your home.
Come on now. Literally. Do something. Make it believable.
Right.
But yeah, when my friends are very, very much into the Bravoverse and Housewives of it all. And again, they only reach out to me on Housewives related mess if somebody gets arrested. And I appreciate y'all for that. I love y'all.
But yeah, that's a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely curious to see how this case continues to progress and, whether they end up going to trial and getting convicted.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, because they might actually get some consequences. Like, yeah, they got pardoned or whatever, but I didn't even expect the Chrisleys to go to prison.
Mhm.
So, and they did for a little bit.
Yep. And unfortunately, I don't think the Osefos will have a pardon waiting for them.
I do not either. They're a little too melanated for that.
Exactly.
But our next spooky case for October, still in the theme of greed, because we have the FBI exposing the illegal sports betting ring in late October of 2025. So, on October 23rd, 2025, in a federal courthouse in Brooklyn, a series of indictments were unsealed that sent shockwaves through the sporting world. 31 defendants were initially charged in a sophisticated scheme to rig illegal poker games across the United States. The list of names included NBA royalty, including Portland Trailblazers head coach and Hall of Famer Chauncey Billups, current Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, and former player Damian Jones. FBI Director Kash Patel described the incident, calling it the, quote, insider trading saga of the NBA, end quote. Authorities revealed two distinct but overlapping criminal operations. First dubbed, quote, Operation Nothing But Bet, end quote, focused on fraudulent NBA wagering, where legitimate sports bettors were being cheated by using, quote, locker room secrets, end quote. According to my sources, players and coaches provided non-public information like pre-released medical data or intent to sit out for games to a network of bettors. One of the most glaring examples cited by prosecutors occurred on March 23rd, 2023, when Terry, then with the Charlotte Hornets, allegedly tipped off a friend that he planned to leave a game early due to a, quote, purported injury, end quote. This allowed associates to place over $200,000 in, quote, under, end quote, bets on his performance. And Terry did indeed exit the game after just 9 minutes. And his associates allegedly drove to his home that night to count the tens of thousands of dollars in profit. There is also Jonte Porter, who previously pled guilty to similar antics with the Toronto Raptors, allegedly exiting games early so his co-conspirators could cash in on his, quote, underperformance, end quote. So that begins to explain the first part, but the second part of the investigation was even more interesting because it included, quote, rigged underground poker games, end quote, backed by 4 of New York's, quote, 5 families, end quote. Those families being alleged crime families, including the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese families, allegedly 4 of the 5 major crime families. According to reports, these games weren't just illegal, they were, quote, mathematically impossible to win, end quote, for the victims, including but not limited to, quote, altered shuffling machines, end quote, with hidden cameras to read every card, quote, x-ray tables, end quote, that saw through cards face down, and even, quote, specialized contact lenses and sunglasses, end quote, designed to read marked decks. Prosecutors alleged that figures like Chauncey and Damon acted as, quote, face cards, end quote. Allegedly, it was their job to provide a, quote, veneer of prestige, end quote, luring wealthy, unsuspecting victims to these high stakes games in a location like Manhattan, the Hamptons, or even Las Vegas. Once the victims were at the table, they were at the mercy of the, quote, quarterback, end quote, a player in on the scheme who received secret signals about who held the winning hand. When victims couldn't or wouldn't pay their debts, the indictments alleged, quote, acts of violence, including assault, extortion, and even a gunpoint robbery, end quote, to steal one of the rigged shuffling machines from a co-conspirator. By November 2025, authorities in New Jersey announced charges against another 14 individuals involved in separate, quote, mafia-backed sporting betting rings, end quote. This one was linked to Joseph Little Joe Prina of the Lucchese crime family, and this ring allegedly handled roughly $2 million in bets and once again involved college athletes who were allegedly operating sports books at the direction of the Prima organization. By December 2025, stars like Terry and Chauncey pled not guilty, with bail set at $3 million and $5 million, respectively. But the court began hearing out potential plea deal negotiations for some of the 34 other defendants. And as you can imagine, the NBA has been left reeling. While the league generates over $160 million in revenue from gambling partnerships, this scandal has forced them to place Terry and Chauncey on immediate leave and face intense scrutiny over how they monitor, quote, pro bets, end quote.
It was very silly and foolish to get involved with crime family. Because I'm going to tell you, I ain't pleading guilty. I ain't snitching.
I ain't saying nothing.
They going to take you out, your family out. They might even take your florist out, just cause.
Just cause. Your cousin's, sister's, brother's, nephew's donkey is not safe.
Exactly. I'm not snitching. I understand why they pleaded not guilty.
Absolutely. Like, I'm not mad about it. I think it's dumb to start there.
Exactly.
And, sometimes, like, I'm not going to sit here and act like you always get a choice, like, if the mafia comes knocking on your door.
True.
But if you can do everything in your power to not have the mafia knock on your door, that sounds kind of lit.
Yeah, because I don't think the mafia is just knocking on every door of any person involved in the NBA.
Come on now.
You got to be doing something to tell them, he'll do some illegal stuff with us.
He'll do some stuff with us. We can cut some pasta with this man and spill some wine. Yeah. It is crazy to me. But this is honestly one of the things that's been really bothering me is I just feel like sports betting is like getting thrown in our face all the time. What's annoying me is people are trying to make sports betting the new drinking, where it's like, this is an addictive thing and it is a bad thing. But because we as a society have decided that drinking as a society is not that bad, we have normalized it to be a normal behavior. And I feel like that's what they're trying to do with sports betting of like, no, you don't have a gambling problem. You just have to put some money down on everything you see happening in a basketball game. You don't have a gambling problem. Right. That's different. You're not going to a casino. You're just grabbing your phone and like putting $2-3 down every 5 minutes.
Yeah. And it's even worse. Similar with how we really almost kicked cigarette smoking, then they came out with vapes.
Yes.
They made it easier to access it, and it actually makes the addiction even worse because it's easy to just download an app on your phone, connect your bank account or your PayPal account, and just bet on whatever. It's actually so much worse for people who have gambling addictions, and unfortunately people who before didn't have gambling addictions but probably will now.
Exactly. Absolutely. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. So yeah, I've always hated it. I'm just like, this is not, y'all are not going to make this normal to me.
Yeah.
And I will not be partaking because
I will not be partaking. Gambling scares me. Even the time I went to Vegas, I literally had somebody give me a $10 chip and I still cashed it in. I think that's extreme. I admit it. But gambling scares me.
Yeah. I definitely am scared of gambling as well. But I come from a family of addictive tendencies. So I don't want to give nothing any airtime. But what I do, and this is the thing that I think was really funny, I tell everybody this. I only gamble on cruises and I only gamble the first 2 days of the cruise. Because the first 2 days of the cruise, I'm convinced that everybody's going easy on you. Because they want you to win, right? They want everybody to be up. And they want everybody just to, have a good time, let everything flowing. And they get you on that 3rd, 4th, and 5th day. And they steal all your money. So I go, I put in my $20 because that's all I'm willing to lose. Because, I'll spend $20 on a DoorDash order. So I put in my $20. I'll make my $50 and then I leave. That's all I do. And I get out and I don't go back the whole time I'm there.
I support that.
I've never lost in the casino. I've never lost because I go 2 days early and I don't. And I go home after I start making a little money.
The other thing about cruise casinos I don't like is the smoking.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely gross, but you can smoke in any casino.
Yeah, but it's just in the cruises, that's like the main place people can smoke. And then it's just when you even walking through a casino, it is just straight cigarette smoke.
Yep. It is gross. It's gross. That's also why you go the first 2 days too, because they haven't all swarmed the boat yet. So if you go the first 2 days, you're gonna be all right. But day 3,
see, I messed up. The last cruise I was on was a 3-day cruise.
Yeah, nah. I only go on 4-day cruises now because 3 days is just too short. It's like by the time I get settled in and everything, I want to have like 2 solid days on the boat. And our final case for our spooky month happened on Spooky Day. Because on October 31st, 2025, A jury reached a decision in the case of the first-degree murder of Charles Jones. 22-year-old Alicia Andrews stood as the first of 5 suspects to face trial for the ambush-style killing of Charles Jones, better known to millions of fans as the rapper Julio Julio. This verdict was the accumulation of a trial that peeled back layers of a deadly gang war, a quote reconciliation trip gone wrong, and a young woman's claim that she was a captive participant in a plot she never saw coming. But before we get into October 2025, we have to go back to June 23rd, 2024, when Charles Jones was in Tampa celebrating his birthday, and what was supposed to be a getaway trip became a trap. Investigators say a group of 5 people, Alicia Andrews, her boyfriend, Isaiah Chance, and 3 other assailants, Sean Garthright, Davion Murphy, and Rashad Murphy, traveled from Jacksonville, Florida to Tampa, Florida, specifically to hunt Charles down. According to prosecutors, this wasn't a random act of violence. It was a calculated strike in a decade-long feud between Jacksonville's 6-block gang, of which Charles was allegedly a member, and their rival, the ATK and 1200 gangs. The prosecution's case was built on high-tech surveillance. They argued that Alicia Andrews and Isaiah Chance acted as the, quote, spotters, end quote, in a silver Chevy Cruze, while the, quote, assault team, end quote, of Sean, Davion, and Rashad followed in a black Chevy Impala. They tracked Charles from a party to multiple nightclubs, including Teasers and Truth 18, using Charles' own social media posts to pin down his location, until they finally found him. And the ambush happened outside a Holiday Inn near the University of South Florida. At approximately 4:40 a.m., 3 masked gunmen emerged from the black Impala and opened fire on Charles' vehicle with modified, fully automatic rifles. Charles Jones, better known as Julio Julio, was killed, and 3 others were injured in a hail of bullets. Sometime after this event, all participants were arrested and charged with the murder of Charles Jones. Now, going back to the trial in October 2025, Alicia Andrews actually took the stand in her own defense on October 30th. Her testimony primarily focused on what she described as an abusive and controlling relationship with Isaiah Chance. She told the jury that Isaiah Chance would hit her, control her clothing, and even break her phones. According to the defense, Alicia didn't know she was going to Tampa until the day they left. She thought it was a, quote, reconciliation trip, end quote, meant to fix their relationship. She claimed she stayed in the car during the various stops, unaware that a hit was being organized. She testified that Isaiah frequently used her phone to make calls that she wasn't privy to, and that she never saw a gun that night. However, the prosecution painted a very different picture. They showed the jury a 2021 text message where a then 17-year-old Alicia Andrews told a friend that Julio Julio, quote, needed to die, end quote. While Alicia dismissed it as, quote, teenage gossip, end quote, the state used it to establish a motive. They also pointed out that she followed the victim on social media and had been seen on surveillance footage in the nightclub's parking lot acting as, quote, cover, end quote, for Isaiah so he wouldn't be recognized alone. Beyond the testimony, the physical evidence was damning. Detective Juan Ramos described a web of data, including license plate readers, cell site location data, and even a McDonald's drive-thru video of Alicia Andrews and her co-defendant, Davion Murphy. The jury saw footage of the defendants loading bags into the black Impala in Jacksonville before the trip. They saw the, quote, locking logs, end quote, from the Tampa Airbnb that contradicted Alicia's initial claims to police about who had access to the house. Perhaps most striking was the details that after the shooting, Alicia and Isaiah returned to Jacksonville via an Uber because the co-defendant, Sean Garthright, had, quote, somewhere else to go, end quote. And the Uber driver even testified about transporting the group back home. In the end, Alicia Andrews was found guilty of manslaughter by a Florida jury on October 31st, 2025, for her role in the ambush-style killing of rapper Julio Julio, also known as Charles Jones, in Tampa, Florida. She was acquitted of the more serious charge of conspiracy to commit murder. She is facing up to 15 years in a Florida prison. Her sentencing, originally set for December 8th, has been delayed. Meanwhile, The 4 other men, Isaiah, Sean, Davion, and Rashad, are scheduled to stand trial in 2026. But unlike Alicia, they all may face the death penalty.
And they're facing it most likely because they were adults when this happened.
Correct. She was an adult as well, but they are accused to be the ones actually putting the hit together, and the 3 men are accused of actually doing the killing.
Okay. I thought she was 17.
She was 17 in the 2021 text, but the murder itself happened in 2024. So she was an adult.
Yeah.
But she's not accused of actually doing the killing, which is probably how she got skirted out of the death penalty, which makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that like oh, she should, but I'm sure that's why.
Yeah. And I think the sad part is, if it is true that she was in an abusive relationship, it makes it very difficult to see how in that moment she could have seen a way out. In that moment, it might have seemed like the best decision for her to just go along with it. If it is true that she knew nothing about what was planned and didn't know that her boyfriend was using her phone to orchestrate this murder.
Right. I definitely think that's a portion of it. And clearly the jury believed her, because if they didn't believe her, you don't give her manslaughter if you don't believe that she's
Right.
not also a victim. Right. And I did not watch this trial. Remember seeing it in the news, and I remember like people talking about it a lot, but I didn't make it a point to watch it. So I don't completely know the ins and outs of it. But I think if she is a victim, and I am choosing to believe her, that her sentence makes sense.
Yeah. Do we know when her sentencing was delayed to?
Sometime in February. I was unable to find a specific date.
And before we close out October, I just want to do one more story. And I just want to give a special shout out to one of our fans, listeners, and subscribers on YouTube, Kelly, for suggesting that we cover this case. And that is the trial of Sakina Thompson. So on October 14th, 2025, after just 1 hour of deliberation, the jury would find Sakina Thompson guilty of first-degree murder in the case of Kayla Hodgson. So to orient everybody to the details of this case, we're actually going to go back to 2022. It was in 2022 that 31-year-old New York native Sakina Thompson traveled to Tamarack, Florida, with the intent to kill 23-year-old Kayla Hodgson, whom she believed was dating her ex-boyfriend. On July 13th, 2022, Sakina arrived at Kayla's apartment around 5 a.m., wearing a mask and disguise. She used a fraudulent Uber account to book a ride to Kayla's apartment. After entering the apartment, Sakina stabbed Kayla dozens of times and eventually fled after attempting to clean the scene and even changing into Kayla's clothes, which she was seen wearing on surveillance footage. Sakina was arrested in New York on August 3rd, 2022, and extradited to Florida to face charges. During the trial, which began in October of 2025 in Broward County, Florida, Sakina took the stand in her own defense, admitting to the stabbing, but claiming that she acted in self-defense to protect herself and her unborn child after being attacked by Kayla with a piece of hookah glass. She further testified that she quote-unquote blacked out during the struggle and did not remember the actual killing. Prosecutors countered this by presenting evidence of premeditation, including her travel from New York, her disguise, and the use of the fake Uber account. And like I said, on October 14th, the jury didn't even need 2 hours. They only needed 1. That's enough time to go in, reread the charges, make sure everybody has had their say, an extra 15 minutes just for good measure. And they came back and found her guilty. On December 1st, 2025, Sakina was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the sentencing hearing, Kayla's family provided emotional impact statements, describing her as a kind-hearted, quote-unquote, fashionista, and calling Sakina's actions, quote, wicked and evil, end quote. The judge also characterized the killing as, quote unquote, heinous before imposing the mandatory life sentence. And I actually saw the body cam footage related to this case that actually came from her boyfriend, Kayla's boyfriend, Sakina's ex-boyfriend, discovering her body in the apartment. And you can just tell he is just distraught. He doesn't know what's going on. He'd been calling her. He had actually gone to the apartment before, didn't realize that her door was unlocked. And the second time he went back, he saw her car, went up to the apartment and came in. And then you end up seeing her cousin coming because she'd heard that Kayla had been found. You see her mom and her aunt show up. It is just heartbreaking to see the scene And then they did show footage from the trial where I forget which family member said this, but they basically called Sakina out for being jealous. And they said the only consolation that Kayla's boyfriend has, who I can't remember his name, the only consolation he has is that he will never have to deal with Sakina again.
Ooh.
And that Sakina was jealous because Kayla was everything she wasn't.
They always are.
Mm-hmm.
They always are. Well, one, good burn. Good burn.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that. And I was actually the opposite. I knew nothing about this case. I did not follow this one at all. So that's one of the things I love about this too. It's like this thing that's big in the news, but clearly missed my radar. And I appreciate you kind of talking through it for me. And I don't know, man. And like, I'm not going to sit here and try to play all holier than thou. Like, I haven't ever made a bad decision over a man, right? But like, to fly from New York to Florida, get in an Uber to go confront my ex's girlfriend is something I've never done.
And I think what really put the nail in the coffin here is she used the fake Uber account.
It's the fake Uber account, but also putting on her clothes.
Putting on her clothes. That's the aftermath. Defense could maybe still argue, oh, it was the heat of the moment. She freaked out. The fact that you made a fake Uber account to go there shows that you intended to commit some sort of crime when you got there.
Hello. Because why else do you not need to know who you are?
Exactly.
Why else do we not need to know who you are?
Exactly. And all of this over an ex.
Over an ex. And this is the thing, man. It's just like, I've had some bad exes. I've had some, man, maybe that one got away. Really only one, now that I think about it. I only got one ex that I would ever entertain getting back with. And that's really only because his mama liked me. You know who you are. Shout out to you. But I will never understand the chemistry of people who mess their whole lives up over exes. Man, woman, they, whatever. But to ruin your whole life over a man?
And then to target the woman.
Right. Because what did she do other than show up and clearly be a better girlfriend to him than you are?
Exactly.
Because it's not even like, again, even though this would not be justified by any means, because I think it's stupid when people do it in a less violent scenario. Even if it was like I'm blaming her because she broke us up and she's the affair partner and whatever else. But like, it doesn't even seem like you have that going on. It sounds like you're just mad that your ex is dating somebody younger than you and clearly is a better person than you and maybe even be prettier than you. And you feel some type of way about that.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of growing up, leveling up and moving on, you have decided to ruin your life and spend the rest of your life in prison.
Ruin your life, ruin Kayla's life, ruin the lives of her family members and loved ones, ruin the life of the man I guess you claim to love in some weird way because now he's traumatized.
Right. And then also, let's talk about this too. Where is this alleged unborn baby? Where is this baby at? Ma'am, the jury would like to know, where is the baby?
Her and Laura Owens might need to do some talking. If you don't get that reference, watch part 2.
Thank you.
But yes, so sorry just that Kayla's family is going through this, is having to deal with this. I'm glad that Sakina was convicted and sentenced, and they hopefully do not have to deal with her mess again. And lastly, thank you again to Kelly for suggesting that we cover this. We appreciate your support so much. And if you are like Kelly and there are cases that you want us to cover, let us know. You know, Kelly sent us an email. We read any email we get, especially from our fans. We will prioritize any requests that come through our Patreon, but anybody can feel free to send us suggestions over email.
Absolutely. And remember, sometimes the cases are a little too fresh or a little too well covered for us to make them designated episodes. So we compromise by doing things like this and including them in our end of year recaps. So just because it's in the news doesn't mean we won't cover it. We just might not dedicate a whole episode to it.
Right. And now we're going to move on over to November. And our first case for November is a doozy. And that is when your namesake, Devin Michaels, was found guilty of murder. This happened on November 14th, 2025 in Las Vegas, Nevada. After just a couple hours of deliberation, 47-year-old Devin Michaels was convicted of murder with the use of a deadly weapon in relation to the murder of 46-year-old Jonathan Willett, her ex-husband, father of 2 of her kids, and technically also her father-in-law. We'll get to that. Jonathan was killed as he was supposed to be moving into Devin's home on August 7th, 2023. This was supposed to be part of them creating a better environment for their daughters. The prosecution stated that Devin confessed to police that she'd hit Jonathan over the head while he was lying down, but denied decapitating him, which did happen. The defense, on the other hand, claimed that 29-year-old Devier Willette, Jonathan's son, murdered Jonathan because he was afraid that his father moving in would result in him losing Devin, his wife, and his home. Sentencing has been set for January 8th, 2026, just a couple weeks from now, and Devin is facing life without parole, as prosecutors are not seeking the death penalty. And this case actually almost had a different ending because Devin had pleaded guilty to second-degree murder last year, which would have resulted in her being eligible for parole after serving 15 years. But she then tried to revoke her plea, and then during sentencing in the summer of 2025, she stated to the judge that she was innocent, causing the case to go to trial. If you plead guilty, you can't say that you're innocent, or else you're going to have to go to trial. And I know I sort of teased at this, I sort of sprinkled it in, but the primary mess in this case is that Devin was at one time married to 46-year-old Jonathan Willette. Years after they divorced, she then married his son, Devier Willette. Devin and Devier told police that they'd only married for insurance benefits, but police found out that they'd been having an affair for years while Devin was dating Jonathan, allegedly starting when Devier was 19 years old. And even though Devin and Jonathan had agreed that he would move in to create a more stable home life for their daughters, prosecutors stated that she thought that him being there would mess up the life that she had with her new husband, Devier. And as I mentioned, Jonathan had been decapitated. And unfortunately, police still have not been able to retrieve the murder weapon or Jonathan's head. Devin and Jonathan were married from 2012 to 2018. And she got married to Devier just a couple years after their divorce. And the last thing I want to say is just a strange connection. If you've listened to part 1, you'll remember that we covered the case of Fabio Cementelli, the hairstylist who was murdered in a plot put together by his wife and the man she was sleeping with. Well, it turns out Devin used to be married to that man, Robert Louis Baker. Just a strange connection.
I don't like it at all.
Yeah.
Dear Lord, I'm going to say something that I don't think is accurate, but I still feel that way. You predatory ass.
Oh, for sure.
Like, sure, legally he's an adult. But how long was he a child when you were eyeballing him? At what age did you start to notice that he stopped looking like a child?
Yeah, and I will say they got married in 2012, so Devier would have been 18 when they got married. I don't think they were dating for long before they got married. So it's possible when she met him, he was 18. We don't know. But it definitely, I don't think she wouldn't have known him when he was like under 16.
That's still gross to me.
It's still gross. I'm just saying, like, he was a teenager. I don't think she knew him when he was a child.
Fair enough. But to me, because especially now I'm in my old lady era, everybody who's under like 22 is a child to me. I ain't gonna hold you. So a year into their marriage, you thought it'd be a good idea to sleep with your husband's child.
Allegedly.
Nah, you've been convicted. You nasty bitch.
She's been convicted of the murder. Trying to legally protect us.
Fine. Cam wants to be responsible. I'm a glass of XXL and I don't care. You nasty, nasty woman.
Oh, she's 100% nasty.
Because also, like, I think it also says a lot. You are going to jail for murdering your ex-husband after you had an affair with his son. And then your ex is also going to jail for murdering somebody's husband while they were having an affair.
Yeah. The crazy part about this, they don't think Jonathan knew that Devin had married his son.
How, Sway?
It wasn't a public thing. I think Jonathan might have thought Devier was living there just because
he has built some kind of relationship
or something like that. But they don't think Jonathan knew that Devin and Devier were married, which is also crazy.
It's so nasty. I hate all of it. I hate predatory ass people. That is a big thing for me. I hate people who prey on vulnerability because at the end of the day, yes, they are legally an adult, whatever. But a 19-year-old does not have the life experience of a 46-year-old woman at that.
Right.
You know, men don't mature as faster, blah, 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 blah. We'll put all the BS of it all aside. Factually, nobody, teen, anything should be dealing with anybody 40 anything.
Nobody teen anything should be dealing with anybody
30 anything.
30 anything, late 20s anything, barely mid 20s anything.
I will give you up to mid 20s. And when I say mid 20, I mean 25. The day you turn 26, you old. And the only reason I'll give you that is because y'all can meet on a college campus, because you can be 25 getting a master's degree and they can be a freshman in college, right? You can be in a similar experience of life in college, but it's not, oh, I have my own house, my own job, I'm paying all my bills, and I'm dating this 19-year-old who has no life experience.
Yeah, technically you can be any age getting a master's degree. I don't even like 25 because as a 25-year-old, I didn't even want to look at anybody under 22.
I mean, I agree. I don't like
I give it up to 23 because you could be finishing your undergrad degree technically at 23.
Fair enough. I was still getting a master's at 24.
You technically did a bachelor's master's combo.
I did combo. I went back to back. So, but also the vast majority of people I knew who were in my program also went back to back. Nobody took a break. But either way, I don't love it. I think it's weird. I think it's extremely predatory. And I think like you disrespect him by dating and marrying his son after you married him. And then you kill him and you hide a portion of his body that can never be buried. So we can never have a whole funeral. The amount of malice it takes to hide somebody's body from their family is so evil.
Right.
It is just one of those things that like, I just know that you did it. Quite honestly, if I ever hear that you hid their body, I'm like, oh, you're a murderer. I don't need to hear nothing else. I don't hear nothing else. Because if you weren't a murderer, what you hiding bodies for?
Exactly.
Because what did you do to his head that made you have to hide it?
Here's why I think she hid the head. Because that contains how he died.
Boom. Exactly. That's what I mean.
Because they can't determine exactly how he died. They still to this day don't know how he died. She claims she hit him over the head, but they could not confirm that without the head.
Exactly. To me, the only reason you're hiding things is because it proves that you did something. And it's going to prove that maybe there isn't a hit over the head. Maybe there's something a lot more nefarious.
Exactly.
Also, though, I love when people screw themselves over because you cannot plead guilty to get a better deal and then say you're innocent. I love that she screwed herself over like that. Because per usual, a lot of people think this. A lot of people think they can go in and plead guilty to things and then make their little statement to the court about how they're innocent. They should give them leniency. And the court's like, that's not how this works.
Right. Because
there's a difference between pleading guilty and pleading no contest. Because if you plead no contest, you can do that. Because you're saying, I'm not saying I'm guilty, but I'm saying they got enough information to convict me. So you can still plead the court of I'm innocent. The data just looks bad. But if you plead guilty, use guilty.
Right. You cannot say I'm actually innocent. And unfortunately, there are people who are talked into guilty pleas. I think it's something like 90% of cases don't actually go to trial.
Yep.
There are people who are innocent who are talked into just pleading guilty because it's going to be the easier way out. But you cannot sit in front of the judge, plead guilty, and then tell them that you're actually innocent.
Right. Because that is a legal issue.
Yeah. Because now they cannot take that plea.
Yep. Again, that's why you go no contest if you can. Some states don't allow you to plead no contest.
Yeah.
But if you
can,
Alfred pleas are just open to the court though. Alfred is still a guilty plea. It's just like Alfred pleas are specifically, I didn't make a deal with the prosecution. I'm just pleading guilty and letting the judge decide what happens to me. So that's the only difference. You still have to plead guilty. You can't plead Alfred, but you can.
Got it.
You can plead. Yeah. It's plead open to the court, basically.
Also, I wasn't trying to give a mouse a cookie. I just want to make sure any statement we say on here can be factually backed up.
Girl, I understand. I know. You know I'm just mad.
I know.
And I appreciate you looking out for my well-being because I'm just mad. And quite honestly, I'm a little triggered. And Cam knows that, which is why she keeps trying to bring me back down to reality.
Yeah.
And
she deserves all the smoke. She deserves all the smoke on Patreon.
Ooh, there we go.
Because sentencing is coming up. And I believe the trial was televised. I've at least seen pictures from the trial. She looked a mess.
Of course
she looked a hot mess. She looked like she probably did look like something back in her younger days. She looked like a hot mess. Prison has not done her well.
I mean, usually evil in prison will age you. Evil in prison will age you.
So now on to our next case for November. This is another one that I know you've heard of, and I'm sure most of our listeners have. And this is when Anna Kepner was found dead on the Carnival cruise. This happened on November 7th, 2025, on a Carnival cruise, so not in a particular city. But 18-year-old Anna Kepner was found dead under a bed from what appeared to be strangulation. Although no charges have been filed at the time of our recording, family court proceedings have revealed that Anna's 16-year-old stepbrother, who she shared a room with, is a suspect in her death. Since her death happened on a cruise ship in international waters, the FBI is handling the case, and thus there isn't a lot of information coming from them. What we do know, though, is that Anna was on the trip with her father, 2 siblings, grandparents, stepmother, and 2 step-siblings. And we've actually gotten the most information from the custody case. Apparently, in the aftermath of Anna's murder, Anna's stepmother, Chantel, and her ex-husband, Thomas, had talked about how they were going to tell their children about it, with Thomas apparently saying that he wanted to let his son know that he wasn't, quote, just dead to everyone, end quote, and that he was worried about his son's name getting out on social media. The stepbrother, suspected in Anna's murder, also apparently told his mother and other family members that he couldn't remember what happened to Anna. And I've also seen conflicting statements. So on one hand, I've seen things saying that Anna was uncomfortable around her stepbrother. On the other hand, I've seen statements from the grandparents saying that they were a blended family and that they brought all the stepkids in. They didn't see them as stepkids or non-step kids. When Chantel and Anna's father got married, they were all just one big family, and the grandparents made it seem like Anna was close with her step-sibling. What we do know about Anna is that she was a high school cheerleader from Florida who was supposed to graduate in May of 2026. She is described as independent and strong, and she had aspirations of joining the Navy after graduation.
Yeah, girl. This case made me so sad. Like I talked about earlier in this episode, I love cruising. Cruising is my favorite way to vacation. I tend to find cruising a very safe way to vacation. And I am a frequent user of Carnival Cruise Lines. So this case really hit home for me. But it's also why I have such strict rules with my friends when we do go on cruises. I'm that person that's like, if we're going on a cruise, we have to have breakfast and dinner together every day. No excuses. If you gonna be late, you tell somebody you're gonna be late, but you have to show up. I don't care if you hungover. I don't care if you're miserable. I need to lay eyes on you first thing in the morning and before I go to bed. And it's just so terrifying that like this very happy like family occasion has been taken and like morphed into the worst possible scenario.
Yeah.
And it's so unfortunate, but I remember being devastated by that because I've been that girl. I've been 18 on a cruise ship with my family because I also come from a blended family, and just having the time of our lives and it being this perfectly wonderful experience, and that's just been shattered. Yeah, that was really a sad one to hear about.
Yeah, and I think the scary part is that the suspect in her murder is someone that she was at least physically close with, someone that she shared a room with, and someone who her family probably thought they didn't have to worry about.
Right. Of course, because of course you trust your kids with your kids.
Yeah. And on the quoted text from the stepbrother's father, Thomas, I get where he's coming from. One, that's your son. Even if he is being accused of this, he has not been found guilty. You don't want his name out there. That's why I did not try to dive deep and find his name. Even if his name was just out and about, I wouldn't have included it in here because he is a minor and he has not been found guilty.
He also hasn't even been arrested.
He has not been arrested. He has not been formally named a suspect.
Right. So again, we're going off of court documents that are, suspicious and the only thing that we have to go off of. But at the end of the day, legally, the kid hasn't done anything yet.
Yeah.
And respect that. I don't go out of my way to look for people. If your name is not publicly available in a court of law, it's none of my business.
Right. So for our last case of November, I wanted to end on a bit of a high note after our last couple of cases were pretty dark. And that is the case of a woman suing her husband's mistress and winning. This took place on November 10th, 2025 in good old Durham, North Carolina. In this case, Akira Montague sued fellow social media influencer Brene Kennard for alienation of affection and criminal conversation, all stemming from an alleged affair she had with Akira's husband, Tim. After the jury deliberated, Brene Kennard was ordered to pay Akira $1.75 million. So if you're listening to this and you're like, wait a minute. So if my man cheats on me, I could sue the bitch he was fucking. Pause. Let's back up a little bit. Some technicalities here. 1. This happened in civil court via a North Carolina specific law that lets a spouse, y'all gotta be married, seek damages from a person accused of interfering in their marriage. And it can't just be that, y'all were already separated, they started talking to somebody else, you mad. The alienation of affection law allows a spouse to take legal action against someone that purposefully hurt their marriage. The criminal conversation claim can be invoked when a spouse can prove that a third party had sexual relations with their partner during the marriage. The spouse bringing the claim must show that the marriage previously had love and affection and that the person being accused caused the end of said love and affection. While most states have gotten rid of these kinds of laws, North Carolina maintains them because its state law views marriage as a protected relationship. So, if your man's sleeping with somebody else and you want to sue them, make sure 1, y'all married. 2, you're in a state like North Carolina or Georgia. And 3, it was a happy and loving marriage, or you can at least prove that it was, and that you can prove this person ruined that. And it's North Carolina, Georgia, right?
Georgia, I know for a fact because I had a little situation that I'll tell y'all about in a bit. But Georgia, I know for a fact it is. I think it's actually maintained in a lot of southern states. A lot of the Bible Belt southern states use it as a way to protect women in these marriages. Because I even think Mississippi, you can do it. But it's my understanding that it's even more specific than North Carolina. Like, y'all have to be married for at least a certain amount of time and stuff like that, too.
Yeah. So, yeah. Make sure you check the laws before you get a little too, trigger happy.
Right. Consult with an attorney in your area.
Always. So we also know that Tim worked as Brene's manager, which is likely how they met and began their affair. And we do know that Akira and Tim had married in October of 2018 and had multiple children. Tim also ended up leaving Akira for Brene. Akira claimed that Tim's affair with Brene affected both her emotional and physical health as well as her home stability. She also specifically stated that the affair is what caused her marriage to fail. And she is now $1.75 million richer if Brene follows through with what she is legally required to pay her.
Oh, well, girl, she's got to fight with that too. Because I think last time I checked it, she was trying to file for bankruptcy to try to get rid of it. That don't work. But yeah, girl. Yeah, I remember watching this whole thing. And the thing that I think was funny is like her going in court and trying to act like she didn't do anything when literally, babes, you were on TikTok explaining your plot to steal her husband. She just had to pull the TikTok videos because you was out there.
Right.
Talking about how you was going to steal her husband and you was going to make her kids call you mom and
Crazy.
all this other stuff.
So if y'all are trying to be a side piece, don't.
Have some self-respect.
Have some self-respect, please. But if you lack self-respect, at the very least, please have some common sense and make sure you double check the laws in your state.
Hello. Yeah, because fun fact, this was years ago when I was still in college. I was dating this guy. I was only dating him for about 4 months. And he had told me that he was divorced and that he had a kid, which didn't bother me at the time. I wanted to be a parent anyway. I don't mind dating men with children, right? So one day as we're talking, he was complaining to me about some of his legal issues with his wife, not his ex-wife, not the mother of my child, his wife. And I said, huh? And I was like, I thought you told me you were divorced. And he was like, well, we're getting divorced. We're in the middle of a divorce. So first lie, back up. So I'm not going to run through everything in depth, but eventually I found out that this fool wasn't divorced, hadn't even filed the paperwork for a separation, nothing. Legally, that man is married. And I was talking to a different friend and she was like, of course I was getting up out of that relationship anyway. He just had some of my stuff. So I was trying to play it cool so I could get my stuff out of his house. And my friend was like, girl, you might want to try to move your stuff a little swiftly because his wife can sue you for alienation of affection. And I said, what? I had never heard of that. And she explained it to me. She sent me the laws and stuff. And I said, oh, hell no. Nah.
Right.
I went and got my stuff out of that man's house and broke up with him that week. And then I moved to Florida Literally 2 days later. So it worked out beautifully. I was gone.
Right. And I know in North Carolina, it has to be purposeful. So accidental side chicks, fortunately, would not be included in this.
True, but she still could, like,
you would still have to go to court and prove that you didn't know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, she could have still drugged me through court and
Yeah.
everything else. Which, I want to be clear, would have been her right as an American.
Mhm.
Would I have been upset and in my feelings? Absolutely. But it would have been her right.
Yeah.
Because what you mean you out here in public? This man's traipsing me all over Atlanta. I'm meeting his friends.
Photo shoots.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yes. The whole 9 yards. And you have a whole wife.
Whole wife. Not even half.
Whole wife and a child.
Mm.
And he kept trying to force me to meet the kid too. And I was like, after the fact, I was thinking about, like, what were you going to do if that kid ran back to his mom and was like, I met daddy's friend today. Daddy was hanging out with this other woman today.
Right.
Because the kid wasn't little. I want to say the kid was like 4. Like, it's not like he had it's not like he had a newborn. He had a child.
Yeah. A whole child.
A whole could snitch on you child.
Exactly. Forming words and sentences and everything.
Right. None.
But yeah, cautionary tale to anybody who wants to be a side chick, anybody who wants to cheat, anybody who is trying to get in that realm of anything. If you choose to lack self-respect and respect for the person you claim to love, at least have common sense and knowledge of the laws in your state.
There you go. All you can do. And now we're going to move into our final month of December. I'm going to go ahead and warn y'all. December was very sad, but these cases were very important for me to talk about. So I'm going to talk about them, but unfortunately, we will not be ending the year on a high note in December. And unfortunately, that starts on the night of Monday, December 8th, 2025 at approximately 9:20 p.m. when Santa Monica police received a 911 call reporting an assault in progress. The call came from the home of the 1700 block of Delaware Avenue. When police officers arrived, they were met at the door by Cecilia Sykes, the wife of renowned opera singer Jubilant Sykes. Inside, police discovered the 71-year-old singer with critical injuries consistent with a stabbing. Despite the arrival of paramedics, Jubilant Sykes was pronounced dead at the scene. Also inside the home was the couple's 31-year-old son, Micah Curtis Sykes. Authorities took him into custody without incident. A weapon was recovered at the scene, and the incident was described by police as a domestic dispute with no ongoing threat to the community. Jubilant Sykes was a Grammy-nominated baritone whose career spanned decades. He was perhaps best known for his role as the celebrant in Leonard Bernstein's Mass, a performance that earned him a Grammy nomination for Best Classical Album in 2010. His voice resonated in the world's most prestigious venues, the Manhattan Opera, Carnegie Hall, the Kennedy Center, and the Hollywood Bowl. He didn't just limit himself to opera. He was a master of jazz and gospel, once telling NPR that his singing was, quote, like breathing, an extension of me, end quote. Those who knew him described him as a man whose life radiated joy and who remained devoted to his community despite his global success. Just days after the killing, on Thursday, December 12th, 2025, Micah Sykes made his first appearance in a downtown Los Angeles courtroom accused of murdering his father. Deputy District Attorney Cesar Rodriguez asked the judge to hold Micah without bail, citing the gravity of the crime. During the proceedings, Micah interrupted the prosecutor, shouting, quote, I don't see my mother here. This person's not telling the truth whatsoever, end quote. Despite his outburst, Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Teresa R. McGolligle granted the prosecution's request. Micah was ordered to be held without bail and was served with a protective order prohibiting him from contacting his mother, who had witnessed the attack. As the investigation has unfolded, a clearer, more tragic picture of Micah Sykes has emerged. This was not a sudden break, but rather a accumulation of years of struggle. The prosecution revealed that Micah had been diagnosed with schizophrenia back in 2007, and he was supposed to be medicated, but at the time of the stabbing, he was reportedly either under-medicated or not following the doctor's recommendation. Adding to the complexity, Micah was homeless. Though he officially stayed at his parents' home, He was known in the community for rambling in public and shouting at no one in particular. Jail records also showed a previous arrest on October 2024 for felony grand larceny, though no charges were filed at that time. But perhaps the most chilling thing revealed were the details from the 2017 restraining order filed by a woman named Sarah Bennett. She alleged that Micah had been obsessed with her and had a history of being, quote, violent towards his own family, end quote, for years. She wrote at the time, quote, if he is able to hurt his own family members, how much more towards people who aren't related to him, end quote. Despite the violence of the act, the Sykes family reaction in court was one of heartbreak rather than pure anger. Prosecutor Rodrigo noted that other family members were present and wanted Micah to know that, quote, they still love him, end quote. For now, the legal proceeding is on hold. Micah Sykes' arraignment has been delayed until February 11th, 2026, at request of his defense. He remains in custody at the Santa Monica jail.
Yeah, this is a sad one. Mental health struggles are real. And while I think there is a small percentage of people with mental health struggles that turn outwardly violent, it still does happen. And it is heartbreaking for the people that are victims of that violence, the people that know both the victim and the perpetrator. Even when it's not a mental health struggle, when you have somebody commit violence against another family member, it is always difficult dealing with that and working through it.
Absolutely, it's difficult. And for me, it's always that like duality of like, I have this sympathy for the mental health struggle. I have this sympathy for like, you were probably scared and you didn't know what was going on and you didn't see the thing that you were doing as doing to your family. But it's also that same thing of like, but like how incoherent were you really? And
Mhm.
having to go through the court system to figure out, are you one of the few people whose schizophrenia has come forward as outward aggression and hostility and anger and violence? Or are you using that as an excuse? I'm not saying that Micah is doing that. I'm saying it's something that has to be answered.
Right. And I think even if that is the case, it is also the case that if you cannot control that, it is not safe to have you on the streets. Like if it's proven that your mental health struggles result in such violence, then it's not safe to have you around other people, especially I don't even think him calling for his mother was necessarily aggressive or violent, but it's just the people that will still try to love you and will still try to bring you in because they can't bring themselves not to do that.
Absolutely. I didn't take it as him being violent at all. It's obviously disrespectful to interrupt the court proceedings whenever, but when I was looking at it, I took it as more of a trying to be grounded in reality kind of thing
Mhm.
because I don't know if you do this, but sometimes when I'm really overwhelmed or really stressed out, and a lot of times I have like really, really vivid bad dreams, right? And a lot of times I will like wake up from a dream. And a lot of times what messes with my brain a lot is I'll go to sleep in my dreams and like these horrible things will happen in my dreams. And it takes me like a solid 30 minutes till after I wake up to come back into reality. And sometimes I've had to like call and be like, hey dad, I wasn't in Atlanta yesterday, right? And he's like, what are you talking about? No. And then you can move on kind of thing. So I took it as him having more of a I know I'm grounded in reality if my mom is there. Because my mom is there, so my mom will be able to talk about what really happened, quote unquote.
Yeah,
Is kind of how I took it.
and I more mean not even him calling her out in court as violence necessarily because I don't think he was being violent in that moment. I don't think most people would take it as that, but it's clear that he looks to her for solace, but that could turn into violence
Correct.
in the future.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that prior to this, as was noted in that restraining order, this wasn't the first time that he'd been violent with his family, but I'm sure his family still forgave him and took him in.
Of course, especially if they are people who are understanding that this is a mental health struggle and that like at the end of the day, like despite what people want to believe and push out, mental health recovery is not linear.
Yeah.
It's not a straight line. It's not a straight upward motion. There's going to be times where you recess. There's going to be times where you do things that you didn't plan to do, or like you get on a new medication and it doesn't react well and all those things. But when you have family that loves you, you have family that accepts that
Yeah.
and takes it in and takes it in stride and walks with you through it. And it sounds like that's the kind of family he had, even with all of this.
Yeah. I mean, I really hope that the family gets the support that they need. Because that's just terrible to go through. And the
Absolutely.
mother, especially having witnessed it.
Exactly, and probably feeling so helpless because there's nothing she could do. Because if he is, like, let's say, for lack of a better word, I don't know the actual terminology, but I'm gonna go with what Hollywood has put out there. If this is some kind of schizophrenic break, it is dangerous for her to try to get in there and stop him.
Right.
So I'm sure she felt incredibly helpless and couldn't do anything. So unfortunately, our next case is very similar to our previous case, as our next case is another instance of patricide. And that's because on Sunday, December 14th, 2025, the Los Angeles Police Department responded to a medical aid call at approximately 3:30 p.m. at a mansion in the Brentwood area. And what they found inside of the home of the 200 block of South Chadbourne Avenue were legendary director Rob Reiner, age 78, and his wife of 36 years, Michelle Singer Reiner, age 70, both dead in their bedroom. Initial reports indicated they were discovered by their youngest daughter, Rami Reiner. Death certificates later revealed the couple died within minutes of each other after sustaining multiple knife wounds. Almost immediately, the investigation turned towards a member of their own family. Their 32-year-old son, Nick Reiner, was identified as the primary suspect. Sources indicated that just hours before the bodies were discovered, Rob and Nick had been seen in a quote, big fight, end quote, at a holiday party hosted by Conan O'Brien. Witnesses at the event claimed Nick's behavior was, quote, freaking everyone out, end quote. Following the discovery of his parents, Nick allegedly fled the scene. He was reportedly seen on footage buying a drink at a gas station and had checked into a hotel in Santa Monica before being arrested in Exposition Park later that Sunday evening. Rob Reiner was a Hollywood luminary, the son of comedian legend Carl Reiner, who rose to fame on All in the Family before directing classics like The Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally. He met Michelle, a photographer and producer, on the set of When Harry Met Sally, and together they were known as a devoted couple who shared 3 children. Their son, Nick, however, had a long public struggle with, quote, drug addiction and homelessness, end quote, that began in his early teens. He spent years in and out of rehab centers, a period that eventually served as the basis for the 2015 semi-autobiographical film Being Charlie, which he co-wrote with his father. At the time, the family believed the project had brought them closer together, with Rob admitting that they had previously failed to listen to their son during his darkest moments. But by December 2025, that healing seemed to have fractured. Since the murders, reports have surfaced that Nick was receiving medical treatment for schizophrenia at the time of the incident. On December 16th, District Attorney Nathan Hochman announced that Nick Reiner had been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with a special circumstance of multiple murders. Because he allegedly used a knife, he also faces a special allegation of using a, quote, dangerous and deadly weapon, end quote. If convicted, he faces a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. Nick made his first court appearance on December 17th. Observers described him as having a blank face while wearing a, quote, suicide prevention vest, end quote, and shackles. He is currently being represented by celebrity defense lawyer Alan Jackson, another name brought up from the Karen Reed trial. Nick Reiner remains held without bail, with his next court hearing scheduled for January 7th.
Yeah. This is another one similar to the last one where things like this are so difficult. With the last one, you had the mother witnessing her son stabbing her husband. With this one, you have the youngest daughter, the sister, finding her parents dead. And then her and her other sibling having to not only deal with their parents' death, but also the fact that their brother is the one being charged with it.
Right? It's just so sad. And obviously, everybody has been talking about Rob and Michelle's death. And it's just so sad because, again, like everything I read about them was that they were lovely people.
Mm.
And like, even down to, you know, I'm not saying that this makes you a good parent or anything like that, but like, even down to making sure that, like, yes, your son is going through a hard time and with drugs and homelessness and everything else, but like the last case, not giving up on them.
Yeah.
I will pay for you to go to rehab. I will pay for you to stay in this home. I will give you access to money so that you're not on the street. And then it's just hard to fight that battle.
Yeah. Doing a
And
movie
doing a
together,
movie together.
biographical film.
Doing a movie together and thinking, and I could, especially because of like the creative mind that Rob was, I could 100% see him fully believing that like this has healed the relationship I have with my child. We have found the thing that has brought us together. And seemingly it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
And to close out December, I have brought you the lightest case I could find that was still interesting to me. And that is the case of Jerome Moore being fired from the University of Michigan. So this is the story that fully sent shockwaves through the sports fans of it all, because I am a big sports fan, love college football, and I couldn't believe the mess that I was about to read about the University of Michigan football program head coach, Jerome Moore. Jerome Moore has gone from the pinnacle of sports coaching to a jail cell. The collapse began behind the scenes on Monday, December 8th, 2025. According to prosecutors, a female member of the Michigan athletic staff ended a, quote, intimate relationship, end quote, with Jerome that had reportedly been going on for, quote, a number of years, end quote. Following the breakup, the situation quickly escalated. Prosecutors alleged that Jerome began a campaign of, quote, unwanted contact, end quote, sending numerous texts and making repeated phone calls that the woman refused to answer. By Wednesday, December 10th, the situation moved from a private dispute to a university-wide crisis. The staff member presented herself to the university and cooperated with an internal investigation. While the school had received a tip about their relationship earlier that fall, they hadn't found, quote, credible evidence, end quote, at the time. However, on this Wednesday, new information surfaced that sources described as, quote, overwhelming, end quote. Athletic director Ward Manuel acted immediately, terminating Jerome's 5-year, $5.5 million per year contract, quote, for cause, end quote. Because the firing was for cause, the university is not required to pay out the remaining years of his deal. The most harrowing part of this story took place shortly after Jerome learned that he had lost his job. At approximately 4:10 p.m. on Wednesday, December 10th, Jerome Moore arrived at the affair partner's apartment. Prosecutors stated that he, quote, barged his way, end quote, into the residence, which was unlocked. Once inside, the scene turned terrifying. Jerome reportedly went into a kitchen drawer and grabbed, quote, several butter knives and a pair of kitchen scissors, end quote, and began threatening to take his own life. He allegedly told the woman, quote, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to make you watch. My blood is on your hands. You ruined my life, end quote. The woman, described by prosecutors as, quote, terrorized, end quote, only managed to get Jerome to leave after telling him she was calling the police and her attorney. By 4:34 p.m., while police were searching for Jerome, the university released its public statement announcing his termination for a, quote, inappropriate relationship, end quote. Shortly after, police in Saline, Michigan, located Jerome near Willis and Bishop Roads. He was taken into custody without incident and transported to a local hospital for a, quote, mental health evaluation, end quote, before being booked into the Washtenaw County Jail at around 8:30 p.m. On Friday, December 13th, the public saw the first images of a transformed Jerome Moore. Appearing via video link from jail, clad in an all-white jail-issued uniform, the 39-year-old coach stood charged with 3 crimes: felony home invasion, stalking, and breaking and entering, end quote. A not guilty plea was entered on his behalf. His defense attorney, Joe Simon, maintained that Jerome would comply with all court orders, including a second mental health evaluation and wearing a GPS tracking device. Jerome was eventually released after meeting a $25,000 bond with strict orders to stay in Michigan, abstain from alcohol, and have no contact with the victim. As Jerome waits his next court hearing on January 22nd, the University of Michigan is still left to pick up the pieces.
The victims here are his wife and kids, most likely soon to be ex-wife, his football players, and other people in the athletic department
who believed in him.
And I also heard that he could also be pretty aggressive and emotionally charged in the team rooms and with the other staff members too. So yeah, it tracks.
Yes, it does. It absolutely tracks. It's so unfortunate because I'm not trying to make this bigger than it is, but every now and again, I keep telling myself, Devin, you got to start rooting for our black men. You know you love rooting for black men. You love seeing black men win. And then black men do this.
And this will not stop us from rooting for black men. We will always root for black men.
It won't. But it just pisses me off because I root for y'all so hard.
Right.
I'm so excited when I hear black men making $5.5 million a year coaching college football. Because who else should be coaching college football other than black men? College football is built on the backs of black men.
Right. And of course, now the new head coach that they chose is a white man.
Is a white man, a lily white man at that. And look, I'm going to say something that's very unpopular. I'm going to say something controversial yet brave. Baby girl, our victim of the terrorized crime. She is only a victim when that big ass man came through her front door. That's when she became a victim. You chose to have an affair with a publicly married man. You chose
that you worked with.
You are not a victim until he kicked in your front door. When he kicked in your front door, you became a victim of him kicking in your front door.
Yes. But you were not a victim when he began increasing your salary more than what would call for someone in your position.
Come on now. You were not a victim when you chose to have a years-long affair with a married man. But again, now that there's this giant black man cussing and screaming in your living room, now it's real. And now it's scary. And I'll give you that. It is. But I'm sure you didn't feel that way when you were sleeping with him for the last 3 years, at least, that we know of.
It was exciting.
When he was getting your Plan Bs delivered via DoorDash.
That's crazy. That's disgusting. Girl, get the IUD. Damn.
Come on now. Protect yourselves. In Trump's America, we still taking Plan Bs in Trump's America?
They in Michigan.
Come on now.
But yeah, I do feel bad though for his immediate family, his wife and kids.
Absolutely.
Because she is having to pick up the pieces of her marriage. She is still legally married to him, so she might be somewhat involved in his defense and acquiring the finances to pay for that. She is having to care for her children, care for herself, all of that.
And also, keep in mind, all this hit the fan in 5 days.
5 days.
From December 8th is when he found out that he was getting fired to him being in court on December 13th.
Right.
That's how quickly this whole thing went awry. I don't even think his announcement that he was fired was until the 10th. So like the wife has legitimately had like 3 days to process what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you mean my husband lost his job? What do you mean he's not getting the rest of his contract? What do you mean he's been having an affair? What do you mean that he went to her house? What do you mean he's in prison? Like,
yeah.
So much happened in 5 days.
Whiplash. Emotional whiplash.
Emotional whiplash. That poor woman.
Yeah.
And again, I want to be clear. Yes, the affair partner is a victim of that man terrorizing her. Yes. Again, to me, though, she only became a victim when he kicked in her front door.
Right.
But here's also the thing, babes. Again, you think it's fun to sleep with your boss. What was the end goal? Did you just want to sleep with him for fun? Was he telling you that he was about to leave his wife and kids for you? Because he has small children.
Yeah.
It's not like his kids are old. It's his kids are, 17, 18, 19, about to go to college or something. They're going to be out of the house and then eventually he's going to leave his old lady for you. His kids were young.
If it's a years-long affair, he probably had at least one of those kids during the course of their affair.
Boom.
And her end game, it seems, was getting that higher salary, getting that position.
Girl, work. Put in some work. Like, I'm so sorry. It does not take that much effort to show that you deserve it without having to sleep with the boss.
Exactly.
Because also, here's the thing too. Now that this has happened too, again, a lot of people are going to feel like me. And your face has now been plastered everywhere. I didn't do it here because I don't want to embarrass a victim. Because what we were talking about is the actual crime that took place that she is a victim of.
Right. And we're not in North Carolina, so it wasn't a, alienation of affection issue.
Exactly. So she can't get sued.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it. I'm not putting your face all over our channel, but it is out there.
Yeah.
And people are going to feel some type of way about you for a very long time, Miss Ma'am. Was it worth it? Was 3 years of penis and a couple of $100,000 maybe worth it? To me, the answer is no, but I'll let you figure that out by yourself.
Right.
But that is our last case for December.
So thank you, Dev, for covering that last case. And that actually is going to flow well into our wrap-up segment we call Today in Crime, where we cover crimes or crime-related events that took place on this day. So on this day, December 29th, 1978, Ohio State coach Woody Hayes punched a Clemson player during a game in what would be known as the infamous Gator Bowl punch. The moment occurred late in the fourth quarter when Ohio State was trailing Clemson 17-15. As Ohio State drove down the field, their freshman quarterback, Art Schlichter, threw an interception to Clemson nose guard Charlie Bauman. Bauman ran out of bounds on the Ohio State sideline, effectively sealing the victory for Clemson and ending Ohio State's hopes for a comeback. As Bauman stood up near the Ohio State bench, Woody Hayes, who was known for his legendary career but also his explosive temper, lunged at Charlie and without warning, struck Charlie in the throat or chest area. The footage was a bit grainy, so it's hard to tell. The sideline erupted into chaos as players and officials scrambled to separate the two. In the heat of the moment, Woody Hayes even became physical with one of his own players who tried to restrain him. By the next morning, the Ohio State administration made the difficult decision to fire the man who had led their program for 28 seasons, won 5 national championships, and captured 13 Big Ten titles. Woody Hayes refused to apologize for the punch in his public statement, and the incident remains one of the most polarizing exits in college football history. If you found this story interesting, leave a football emoji in the comments.
Wow! My man said, I would like to apologize to absolutely nobody.
Yeah, and I think before he hit him, he said something like, "You just cost me my job," or something like that. Like, I guess he felt like him losing this championship was going to cost him his job. Yeah.
Sir, you had Nick Saban powers. Shut up. Like, Nick Saban, they were few and far between, but he's had a losing streak, and nothing ever happened to that man.
Yeah. And like I said before, he was known for having a temper. I think I've read that he'd actually been given a gift a few days before of like boxing gloves. I can't remember if they were the actual gloves or if it was like a little trinket of boxing gloves as a joke about how he would sort of fly off the handle. Ooh. Yeah. And then not apologizing is also crazy.
Not apologizing is nuts. Not apologizing is nuts because at the end of the day, like, you're a grown man who just punched a kid.
Exactly.
Like, punched a kid who literally just did his job. It's his job to intersect the ball.
Right.
It is his job to get the ball and win for his team. Could you imagine being punched in the throat because you just did your job?
Exactly.
Look, imagine a rival company just being mad at you for having better numbers than them, and they just walked up and
punched you. That's not how we do things.
It's not how we do things in a civilized society, sir. That's crazy work. Oh, thank you so much for that, friend. Mm-hmm. And it really did, from one bad coach to another. It just rolled right in.
And I feel like even though Charlie got punched, it was a light end to what were some pretty dark stories in this episode. And I think also Charlie was like, yeah, now this is the thing I'm known for, and not like, athletic greatness or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm the kid who got punched by Woody Hayes.
Right.
That's crazy. Any other thoughts, friend?
Nope. That's all I got.
Thank you to our listeners for joining us on today's episode. We have covered a lot of cases today and throughout this entire series, and we have way too many sources to thank, but we do want to give a very special thank you to you, to our listeners, our watchers, our fans, our subscribers, who've not only listened to us, but supported us through this entire journey of Criminalish. If you'd like to check out photos related to this case, be sure to follow us at Criminalish Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Listeners, If you like what you hear, be sure to tell a friend and leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to the Criminalish podcast. And if you are listening on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel and feel free to leave any comments or questions. So as y'all know, we take a break after the end of the year and we come back in April. So we cannot wait to see y'all again in April 2026 when we kick off season 4 of the Criminalish podcast. As always, stay nosy, my friends,
And
and Happy New Year. Bye.